Hi and welcome. We're going to talk about team tools. Last episode we talked about relationship work, and I'm going to jump into the 5 secrets of effective communication. But normally I would never do that. Unfortunately with YouTube, people want to be able to pick and choose what they want to watch. So I'm going to be skipping like some of the most important parts of relationship work, and we will come back and talk about those various tools in another episode. But today we're just going to deal with the 5 secrets of effective communication. If you're experiencing physical abuse, I want you to deal with that first. Please get help. There are some information in the description above on that, right? Many of the tools in team can be used to empower you and help avoid conflict escalation, including the 5 secrets. But you should know that while we want to empower you, we would never blame you. And when you're listening to some of the things, concepts like circular causality, please know no one is ever to blame by someone abusing them emotionally, physically, verbally, or financially. So that is not on you. I want to empower you as much as possible, but know that giving you tools is in no way victim blaming, which is not acceptable. I'll probably repeat that in today's episode. You are never responsible for someone else's behavior, ever. Please remember that. And the 5 secrets can be used even in cases of severe abuse, kidnapping, and they can help protect you until you can get further support and safety. So that's not about getting closer to the other person or connecting more with them emotionally, but rather for your own safety. So refer back to our last episode. I have a link in there on some really important videos on how the 5 secrets have protected people even in some really extreme cases like kidnapping. Okay, all right, let's do a quick overview of the 5 secrets of effective communication. We have the disarming technique, thought and feeling empathy, I feel statements, stroking, and inquiry. And we're going to go into very good detail on each of these. Let me give you some tips before we get started. These are very simple concepts, so it can be deceiving how hard they can be, especially if you're feeling really upset or triggered. Yeah, they seem really simple, and people then when they go to actually implement them are like, oh, that was more difficult than I thought, or it came off weird, or it didn't work the way I thought it would. And that leads me to the second tip, which is they have to be practiced, and I recommend you focus on one each week and try to use it several times a day. And then you can keep adding one. And after 5 weeks, start combining them. It will definitely feel awkward and weird at first, and especially if you're only doing one at a time. You can practice them when no one's around. I use like the TV and YouTube, like watch something that's you don't like. People say things you don't like and you can pause the video and practice one of the 5 secrets. You can do that in a nice safe space. And then make them your own. This should sound like it's coming from your voice and your style of speaking, and but still being true to the technique. So let's dive into the first one, disarming technique. This is where you find the truth in what someone is saying, and you're looking for the meaning behind the message. Now, caveat, this is not perspective, like their truth versus my truth, or some kind of relativism, like I could understand how you might see it that way. Like, definitely not that. That has its place in some places, but it's usually patronizing, right? Like I'm actually right. I get how you could see it wrong, but just don't do it that way. So, what is it? We're going to get into that in a minute, but I just want to give that big caveat first because it's a really easy trap to get into. And it's actually one of the ones that people do teach as communication tools, right? They're like, look for their perspective, which I don't think that's wrong, but that's not disarming technique. That won't put a stop to a conflict. That won't create necessarily a connection like disarming technique. It's its own unique little tool. And this tool does have to be used during a conflict, really, to de-escalate a conflict. And so you need to practice on easier situations because this will be very hard to do when you're feeling emotionally triggered. Like, I'm right. Someone is telling you, no, that's not true. You didn't, you don't know what you're talking about. And like you just read it or you just learned it. And you're like, what are you talking about? I don't know what I'm talking about, right? So you feel particularly triggering. And if you absolutely cannot find something to agree on, you need to skip it. You don't make up anything. You don't just say, yes, okay, I agree, or I can see how you see it that way. Don't do any of those formulaic type responses. Skip it if you absolutely can't do this. And I will say that does happen to me. I have been so emotionally triggered. I have autism, and I can have sensory overload and have worked all day, and I'm tired, physically tired, and my brain's sort of like skipping steps, and then I get triggered, and it can be hard to do this. I will say this technique was a little easier for me to learn once I heard about it, because I did something very similar growing up, because I had learned about finding common ground and how important that is in relationships. And so I'd already been kind of practicing that, and it was a little easier for me. But some of these tools will be easier for you than others. Let me give you an example of what it sounds like. So let's imagine an upsetting event, getting ready to leave for an appointment, and your partner or your friend says, "You're taking too long. You should be ready to go already." So your response might be, if it's disarming, "You're right. I'm not ready yet." Saying it with a big smile. you may not say it with a great big smile, but anyway. So let's do thought and feeling empathy. This is where we repeat what the other person said, summarizing it, using their own words. And it's really important you use their words, their adjectives, their nouns, if they use a feeling word. Lots of times people don't, but use their words. If someone says annoyed, we don't say irritated, because words get attached in our brain to certain meanings, and while we might say a synonym which feels very much the same to us, it may not feel that way to the other person. Also, when they hear the word they said out loud, subconsciously they feel like you got it, you understood them. And I can't tell you how many people feel way more understood because I've basically just repeated back to them what they said to me. Which you don't want to do in great detail, because they'll be like, "Are you just going to repeat everything I say? Are you just going to be a parrot?" You don't want to be a parrot. But you can practice like a parrot. And lots of times you have to take notes to do this. That's why I said sometimes practicing watching a video can be helpful. And as far as feelings, you might have to guess what they might be feeling, because lots of people won't actually say what they're feeling, or they may only say one feeling thing, but you can sense that there's other feelings going on here. So I guess, and I usually throw out a few feelings that it might be. I'll give you a warning. It can be hard to acknowledge someone might be angry. It might be hard to say that out loud. Oh, you might be feeling angry, and you can kind of soften it. It's easier at first to say, "Oh, I wonder if you're feeling annoyed or irritated," or that kind of thing. Here's an example of thought and feeling empathy. Remember, their partner said, "You're taking too long. You should be ready to go already." I am taking a long time, and you want me to be ready to go already. I can imagine you feel frustrated. Okay, I feel statements. I feel statements or self-disclosure. So we want to focus on feelings, especially during a conflict, but we might use self-disclosure when it's not a conflict and we just want to be closer to the person. And this is where we share how we're feeling. We might also include this as a assertiveness, because it can be hard to express how you're feeling unless you're being assertive. And again, anger might get missed, and again, you might want to soften it until you get used to saying it. And as you learn these 5 secrets, you'll find you're able to say some pretty hard things in a way that doesn't escalate conflict. The other person might feel disappointed or sad. It's not going to be all rosy and all the feelings will be warm and fuzzy, but it will get easier, and it's easier to hear. It's easier to hear that you're angry with me when you also tell me you love me and you want the best for me and you want to be closer to me, right? The self-disclosure is where we bring brief statements about ourselves in addition to the feelings. And some keys are, we don't want to add any qualifiers like, "I feel X because you did Y." This is a modified blame statement. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So here's our I feel example. You're taking too long. Same scenario. "I feel anxious when I'm running late. I don't like you to have to wait for me." Stroking. So the word stroking, if you didn't see my last video, is all these 5 secrets are by Dr. David Burns, which I forgot to mention at the very beginning. And stroking, he loves cats, but also because, you think of stroking in terms of just calming, like when some people stroke, there's a calming effect to that, and it conveys warmth and respect and affection. And we might do that by saying something good about the other person or their character. We might do it in our tone of voice or a physical touch, a hug, pat on the back. I do recommend you practice expressing it verbally. So it might be like, I'm looking forward to being with you tonight. Those kinds of warm, encouraging statements of connection. So here's a stroking example, same scenario, you're taking too long. I love that you want to be on time. It's something I really respect about you. And inquiry, where we use questions to connect deeper. So we use questions in our life for all kinds of things. And these kinds of questions are about deep, meaningful connection. In fact, and I said this in the last episode, but I want to repeat it in case you didn't see it, that there's all kinds of ways to communicate and talk to each other. This is not about talking. These kinds of 5 secrets are really about connection and having a deep, meaningful connection. And so this kind of inquiry is where we're trying to invite the person to share more and to connect more. And when we do this kind of inquiry, people often feel more understood, more heard, like you really want to engage with them on a deeper level. So it's not just sort of like clarifying questions, which are totally fine and you may need to do, but this kind of 5 secrets inquiry is using a question to connect in a deeper way. So some keys are keeping it general, right? Because we're not trying to get specific information unless we're trying to understand the person better, which is also a way of connecting, right? If we don't understand what they're saying, how can we understand them and them feel heard and understood if we don't understand? Do you understand? And we avoid why questions. Why seems to be like this automatic like defense trigger for some reason. Like we have to explain ourselves, right? Like if someone asks you, why did you do that? You automatically feel like they're asking you to defend yourself. You're asking for an explanation or excuse or some kind of defense. So we avoid the why questions, especially in 5 secrets. Here's our example again. You're taking too long, so on and so forth. I'd like to talk more about this when we get into the car. Would that be okay? So in this one, I shortened it because I wanted to give you a real life example where you might be feeling hurried and rushed and the person's already saying you're taking too long and now you're going to have this long 5 secrets conversation. But I wanted to use a real world example so you could see how adaptable these 5 secrets really are. So let's put it all together. Remember that your partner has said you're taking too long, you should already be ready to go. And your response would be something like, you're right, I am taking a long time and I'm not ready yet. I can imagine you feel frustrated. I feel anxious when I'm running late. I don't like you to have to wait for me. I love that you want to be on time. It's something I really respect about you. I'd like to talk more about this when we get in the car. Would that be okay? All right, so that's to practice. And when you practice, like I said, 1 at a time, and then you'll practice all 5 at a time for a while. But in real life, we generally only use like 2 to 4 of the 5 secrets at a time. You know, if there's a conflict, it can be great to try to do all 5, and especially if you want to feel really close to someone, but it can happen kind of in a little more back and forth with the other person. So I want to give you some homework. There is a communications error list on the relationship journal. If you have one of those, they're in David's book, Feeling Good Together, which is where a lot of this material comes from. And maybe one of those kinds of things are coming up for you in a communication error. So we have things like defensiveness, truth, like that's mine, truth really matters to me. Blame, like it's the other person's responsibility, which may be 100% true. Talked about blame last time. And there's like, I think there's 12 or something like that. I want you to be sure to practice one of the 5 secrets this week. Give it a try and then do a different one next week. And you can start combining them, but really focus on one a week. And I would practice in writing so you can like break it down. Did that actually work? And then even verbally. And we can use a relationship journal, which I'll do more on what that looks like in another video, like what is this relationship journal. Now, let me talk a little bit about why sometimes these fail or why they didn't land right. So disarming can fail because of pride and shame. Like we might not want to acknowledge the truth because it makes us look bad or feel vulnerable. The truth, we might find it hard to let go of how we see truth. And so then we have a block and we can't really see there's truth in what the other person is saying as well. We're like, I don't see how these two things could fit together. And sometimes it's because our mind hasn't been exercised in that way. Like some of this takes a lot of cognitive work, a way that your brain starts like processing information and trying to distill down. Maybe there's a way I can see some kind of truth in what they're saying. Maybe there's something deeper behind what they said. I'll give you an example. I learned this when I was on the crisis line. We were taking some training in the crisis line. When you answer the phone, these are when people call in, they're suicidal. Call in. And we talked a little bit about like, what do you do? And someone calls and they're like really delusional. They're saying all kinds of weird things. And so the psychiatrist who was training us said, well, I've actually had a call like that. And he said, do you want to hear it? And we're like, yes, we want to hear it. He's like, okay. Well, I was sitting there, I get the call, and it's a repeat caller. And it was someone who had a mental illness. And they were like, I'm so terrified. There's like little green men trying to get into my bedroom and they want to kill me. Now this man knew that this person was in a care home. And so he said, oh, it sounds like you're feeling really afraid and you're scared that you're going to be hurt, right? That's what the truth was behind what he's saying. He didn't say, oh, it's true, there's little green men trying to get in there. And he proceeded to say to him, what have you done in the past to stay safe? He said, well, they don't usually get on my bed. Okay, well, how about you go on your bed? Would that work? Yeah, but I still can see the light under the door. There's like that green hue. I just know they're there. He said, well, would it help to put a towel under the door? And so he got off his bed and put some clothes and towel under his door, and he got back on his bed. And how are you feeling now? I'm feeling much safer, and so on. And he basically walked this poor gentleman through a crisis. And the reality was, he was in a care home, and sometimes there's bullying by the other members who are in the home. And he was feeling really scared. He was expressing it by little green men. When you're looking at disarming technique, there may be a situation where it's not what they're saying that you're agreeing to, but the implication of what they're saying, right? Like, so you always leave your socks on the floor. And it's like, you're right. If you're right about leaving the socks on the floor, you just say you're right. I'm trying to think of a different one. Okay, I have one. You don't care about me. Well, I do care about them. So I can't agree that I don't care about them. But what are they really saying? That I'm not caring enough to set aside my opinion and really hear them, right? So it might be something, and again, these take time to figure out. So it might sound something like, in this moment I'm thinking more about me. You're right. In this moment I'm thinking more about me. So that's what they're right about. So again, just takes practice and using your brain and exercising it. And it's getting more difficult to do that because we're really being I don't want to say programmed. I can't think of another word, but with Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts and even YouTube, with all these algorithms, these companies want you to stay engaged, and so they're not caring about your brain at all. They don't care how you feel at all. They want to make sure you keep watching. And some people watch because they feel good, and that's the kind of videos they watch, or they love expressing their opinion and being like antagonistic, like that feels good to them, and so that's what they're doing. And the algorithm learns that about you and just keeps feeding you, like spoon feeding you information. And your brain, you have to actively choose to engage your brain, because it's going to try to feed you stuff it knows you want to hear. Even if that's controversial, like maybe you like to have controversy, which if you're watching this video, I'll probably see all kinds of things in the comments if that's you. But so just know that this is going to take some effort and some practice, because we live in a world where we're kind of just spoon-fed things, and we're told just to be who you are, and you don't have to change, and everyone else should change, and all kinds of nonsense that doesn't actually work in the real world, because chances are you're not 100% perfect. I mean, maybe you are. Maybe you don't have to change at all. Maybe you're just like super awesome and sweet all the time and always right. Right? Maybe. Okay. And then the third reason disarming can fail is fear. And When we generally agree with someone, we kind of strip away our own defenses, which can feel really scary. Let's talk about some thought and feeling issues. Well, the most common thought empathy error is focus drift. And so it's like when you've lost track of what they were saying. And that can either come from your feelings. Maybe you got so upset or hurt that you forgot most of what the other person said or a lot of their important things that they said. And that happens. You feel triggered. It can also be your thoughts. You know, maybe you start already formulating your response. You want to correct them. They're wrong. They're saying something. You do care about them. They say you don't care. Yes, I do care, right? Like you start to want to correct them or share your opinion or form your own response. It can also be your mind wandering. I have ADHD. I know all about mind wandering and, squirrel. Yeah, that can happen, right? And so we're like, what makes me think of this is like on YouTube videos. I know I'll watch a YouTube video and I'll be like, oh, I can't believe they said that. Like, especially coming from like a therapy perspective, I like want to correct the presenter or add to what they say. And I'm like jumping in. I'll usually pause the video and like jump in and and say my opinion and then hit send. And then I continue watching the video and they address what I just said. I've seen that on lots of people's YouTube videos. I've seen comments where they commented too soon because they actually say that later in the video. I've been guilty of that, right? So one way to practice this is to just pause. Like if you want to comment on a YouTube video, you could just hold on. I know you could type a note and then post it later if you don't want to forget what you're saying. But what I'd rather you do is practice just listening. It's okay. If it's really meaningful to you, you will not forget your opinion. Just like if it's really important, it's not going away. So that can be some good practice. And as far as feelings, yeah, we're going to be triggered and you may have to take a breath or a pause or, go in the bathroom and close the door, those kinds of things that can happen for sure. So a tip here is to really just focus on one short line. Like if you're starting to feel triggered, just focus on one line you think is important and to give that back in the 5 secrets. And then you can also add, I feel a little overwhelmed and distracted. I know you were talking about how you want to go on this trip with me and I feel really excited about it, but I also feel a little stressed because there's some things I know, we have to discuss about it. Could you tell me more? Like, what am I missing? Like what you just said. Yeah, I got a little distracted and lost. So if you could just tell me, kind of summarize what you said, I'd love to hear it again. So I added it into my inquiry, right? So I acknowledged it. I feel statement. I did some stroking. What you said is important to me. And I'm not apologizing. Notice I'm not apologizing because it's not something I can actively change. I have ADHD. I'm going to get distracted. Speaking from a Canadian perspective, I'd probably apologize, but I know that is a very cultural position. And for other people, that's like this admission of some kind of blame or guilt. That's not how we see it for sure. So always, sometimes it is a blame, admission of blame and guilt, right? It's actually an apology. But anyway, okay. But sometimes we just say sorry because it's like a way of connecting and letting them know, I wish it would have been different. And a feeling empathy issue is also avoiding anger, which we kind of already said it, or addressing it kind of provocatively, like, you sound really angry. Your face is red. Are you angry? Right? Like we don't want to poke the bear. That's probably not a good idea. I feel in self-disclosure. What are some mistakes we make here? What might be some issues that come up? Well, we could avoid our feelings, especially anger, but we could avoid it at all because when we feel anger or we feel really hurt or triggered, I don't want to start bawling. I don't want to just start bawling. Or we have all these things that we just want to avoid. And so we don't actually express how we're feeling. And again, this is that pride kicking in, vulnerability kicking in, where we start to create, and this is, I don't want to go off on the circular causality, but just briefly, just like a little taste of it, when we avoid what we're feeling and then we feel lonely because the other person doesn't understand what we're feeling, and then they keep doing the same things because they don't know it's bothering us or hurting us or making us feel disconnected, and so you still have this repeating pattern, do, right? Okay. Another one is just avoid. It's like talking too much about oneself and making the whole conversation about you. This is actually kind of triggering for me because, like, as a therapist and a coach, I'm doing these 5 secrets all the time. And then when I'm in a personal relationship and I start expressing, like, maybe I feel a little disappointed, the other person starts like, well, like I thought this and that, and like I know I'm always so stupid, and they end up in this like spiral of being the victim. I feel very disappointed and sad because I wanted to be able to express myself openly, and now this person's like taking it all on and making it all about themselves. So that can be a little triggering for me, but we also can do it. So I'm kind of, giving you an example as maybe in the reverse. I can't control what other people do. I can only control what I do. So I don't avoid saying I feel, even if this might happen, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So also using I feel to correct or criticize or educate. Like I feel that's inappropriate, or I feel like you don't listen, or I feel sad because you don't listen. Kind of like those kinds of like insert here some way of correcting the person. So a mixed results, this is actually like a formula, that is often taught actually in communication seminars. Like I feel X when you do Y, I would like this, right? Sort of like this. I find this particularly troublesome. I think there's a bias for me personally. I always like when I hear it in my ears, it just does not land well. I can instantly hear the blame. Like when you tell me you feel this when I do this, well, you're telling me you don't want me to ever do that again, right? Like you're saying I made you feel this way, which may be true, by the way. It's just like when you're trying to connect on a deep level and you're trying to like reduce conflict, poking the bear again. Bears are on my mind. They were in we have a little like spring in the back of our property. We've dug a hole to kind of see how much water we get in that spring. We can track throughout the year how much comes out through a little pipe. The bears, plural, actually, have decided it's a great little bear bath. So it's better just to kind of leave off the when you part initially. Now, it can be helpful to do this once there's closeness restored. And I would use lots of stroking, and tone of voice will be really important if we do use this kind of a formula. I also find inverting the formula is better. So like when X happens, I feel this, because then your feelings becomes the most important thing, not what the other person did. So let me give you an example. When you go straight to your computer after work, I feel hurt and sad. You're important to me, and I love to hear about your day. I mean, I get it. Like, often you're exhausted because, like, traffic and the rush hour, and I'm sure that's annoying to be in all that traffic. Is that kind of what's happening, or maybe there's something else? Now, stroking issues and errors. So not being genuine, platitudes, having like this rote, like, that must have been really hard for you to do. You're so brave. Not that ever saying that. I wouldn't say you would never say those things. It's just ideal for stroking to be as specific as possible. Like, you were really brave. If you're talking to, a child, you're really brave the other day when you expressed how you were feeling. So it's like really specific, that kind of thing. So being too general, again, kind of just always saying the same thing. And then not feeling close, so then you don't want to give stroking. So it's like this resistance piece. Why should I say something nice? Let's not say something nice. More like why should I try and encourage them? They never encourage me, and you're just not feeling close. So sometimes the active practice of stroking comes first, and then we actually start to feel more warm toward the other person. This has totally happened to me, especially in a relationship where I was really close with the person, but they were doing something particularly triggering, and it was happening repeatedly, and we're having weeks of like conflict, and it's like, but then it was like, I really appreciate how hard you work. I want to give you a specific example, but I don't want to reveal the person. So I'll be a little bit general. Try and make up something. Here, I'll try and make up something. I love how hard you work to paint the you did such a great job, and we saved so much money, and that was really on you. Thank you very much, kind of thing. You wouldn't necessarily add thank yous, but in that struggling example, it worked. Well, that is the 5 secrets of effective communication. Again, these is like a little snapshot of what part of some relationship tools. There's definitely way more to this whole relationship work in Team CBT. But I did want to do a deep dive on the 5 secrets of effective communication so you have some tools to build deeper connections with the people you love.